we're actually undergoing a few different changes at the same time. From 2020 to 2023, probably more content and more spent on content probably than ever in history. Wall Street tells the streamers, starting with Netflix, hey, we actually want you to not lose a bunch of money every quarter. Then at the same time, we had the strikes that started in 2023. The US started losing, I think we're upwards of like 50% of US-owned media production is not in the US.
It's just really cool that it feels more accessible than I originally thought.
Today, we are sitting down with Christopher Escobar, the executive director of the Atlanta Film Society. Hello, hello. How are you doing today?
Thanks, guys. Doing good.
Fantastic.
Thanks for having me.
We're excited to have you. Can you start by just introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about what Atlanta Film Society is?
Yeah. So as executive director, I have been doing it going on 15 years now, and I'm ultimately the head of the staff. So I'm responsible for the organization having all the resources, everything it needs to have for all the programs we do. And in terms of the programs we do, our flagship program, most people will know, is the Academy Award qualifying Atlanta Film Festival, turning 50 years old next year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
amazing.
Pretty awesome. And then our organization works really hard the other, 350 days a year to do another 150 plus events. And most of those events fall into a few buckets, which are pretty similar to what make up the festival, which is our education programming. We do workshops, classes, demos, like a whole variety of things. During the festival, that's in the conference. Throughout the year, those are registration-based classes. And all of that focuses on the art, craft, and business of film and television, right? So helping filmmakers become better artists, storytellers, but also helping people navigate the industry, everything from a production assistant to producing and everything in between.
That's
spectacular.
a pretty amazing purpose. And to draw it to you personally, can you tell us a little bit about why you got into the world of film to begin with and why the Atlanta Film Society is important to you?
Yeah, so I'll start with why I got involved with the Film Society. I started as a board member back in 2010, and I did that because my background is as a filmmaker. I went to Georgia State University. I got my undergrad and grad degree in production, film production, and I had been a member of the organization. I'd had 2 failed attempts at submitting and getting rejected with my own subpar films, but they say if you can't beat them, join them, so I did. When I started my undergrad program at Georgia State, I realized no, film is really feels right. It feels a calling. I had done media stuff in high school. I'd written little scripts in middle school and elementary school. But in terms of I could actually do this, there's a real path, and I see it. I didn't really see that personally until college more than 20 years ago.
That's great. Shifting gears here to Atlanta Film Society. Our conversation today is centered around State of the Union, what support looks like, what we as creatives and storytellers are bringing to the table, but also how we are interconnected and interwoven. Can you talk about kind of what the society's, what's happening over there, and as far as the industry goes, what are you guys facing with some of the shutdowns and things like that?
Yeah, so I'll start with that, which is just point of context, right? We're actually undergoing a few different changes at the same time. So for one, we had a real boom going, especially here in Georgia, from 2020 to 2023 of the amount of content, probably more content, especially by studios and with big budgets, and more spent on content probably than ever in history during that time.
Okay.
And then a few things catch up all at the same time. So for one, Wall Street tells the streamers, starting with Netflix, hey, we actually want you to not lose a bunch of money every quarter. And so there started to be a recalibration of how much they're producing, because they've been in this arms race of just making more content than necessarily is ever paying off. And so that you start to see a shrink of just the total amount of, regardless of where, total amount of content being made, going less. Instead of 4,000 something TV shows and films being greenlit, that number's shrinking.
And did that get to levels of before the streaming boom? Did it sink?
No.
Okay.
No. But where that's going to ultimately land and stay is still yet to be determined. Then at the same time, we had the strikes that started in 2023. All this exacerbating. What that ended up doing was making the industry both take a pause and go, okay, well, we've made more than we need anyway, so we'll burn through some of that, right? And then they were also starting to look overseas. At the same time, so at sort of the peak of when it was worse, we were, instead of 4,000 shows being greenlit, right after the strikes ended, we were like 1,000. We're not a 3/4 drop. Right? We're above that now, but again, it's still fungible and flexible. Then, as they start looking overseas, they realize, well, with the American economy being strong, the dollar went 20 or 30% further at least, basically everywhere. So everywhere was on sale 20 to 30%. Then there were markets that had gotten more aggressive with their unions, for instance, like the UK. There were ones with with their incentives. There were some places with no unions or cheaper unions, so labor was cheaper. There were places with universal health care, like the United K. So that's not a cost that production has to pick up, right? So it's all these things making a factor where for some producers we're seeing, okay, for this project, it'll cost me half to shoot in Eastern Europe, right, or Australia, or So that's the challenge. Is the U.S. started losing? I think we're upwards of like 50% of U.S.-owned media production is not in the U.S. That is generally we've been 15 or 20%. So we're talking about more U.S.-owned production being made overseas than ever in a very short amount of time, not over a 10-year period, over a 1-year period, 2-year period, right? So that's a huge amount of time. So on one hand, Georgia is still a leading production destination in the United States. We're despite the fact that we're down by as much as 2/3, it's improving now. We're better off in many ways than, say, California, New York. But the whole thing is down. Now, that's not just true on the industry studio side. We're seeing, and how it comes to what we do in the Film Society, that independent filmmaking is down. And you would think, on one hand, oh, well, if people aren't working on the big shoots, they got time. Truth is that's how a lot of people were paying for their independent projects, is the money they would make on the commercial stuff. And so, we're seeing a shrinkage just in the U.S., where film festivals around the country are seeing 10 or 15% less submissions of everything from short films to feature films and everything between. So it's a shrink and a recalibration. Then on top of that, you add sort of the uncertainty and fear and confusion around what's happening with AI and how that's going to affect. So it's like, you've got make less, make more abroad, AI. So it's like all those three things.
This pot's boiling.
Right. And keep in mind, over a century plus, this industry has always experienced change. We went from basically square, silent, black and white film, right?
Yep.
and then they introduced radio, and that took a hit, and then television, right? And that took it. So over time, film got wider. It went in color. It had sound, right? So like there's always been, but normally that evolution and change, with the exception of adapting the sound, which basically happened 1 year to the next. Normally that evolution change happens over a decade, and when studios kind of declining in the big studio system, like that really happened over the period of a decade. So we're experiencing just as much change as had ever happened. We've never had this much competition internationally, like we're seeing now, and there's not been all of these various factors all at the same time in such a short amount of time. So that's part of why it feels so like weird and different, because there has been change, but never to this extent, never this many different ways, and never at this much of a pace. So in terms of how we're adapting, like we're trying to focus on what honestly we and I use the larger we, as in the industry, the community, the government, all of that. At least here in Georgia, there should have been more focus over the last 10 and 15 years on growing the local independents, right? That doesn't mean we don't want the commercial industry that comes from out of state, but by and large, the customer base was not diversified in terms of where they were coming from. They were used to, it's almost like a town that has, the majority of their economy is based on tourism. Like, you need to make sure you're doing stuff that the local folks are wanting to do too, or whatever. Otherwise, if tourists for whatever reason can't or don't want to keep coming, there's your whole economy, right? So we didn't ever have a sizable enough amount of local-based business. And so there was just so much inbound.
Yeah. Do you think that's the first step to returning, or not going back to those levels, but finding that new norm?
It's the first step of not repeating the same mistakes.
Right. Okay.
Because the truth is there's a lot more that can be done with growing the local filmmaker. And what I specifically mean is doing everything we have to do so that local business can be significant. Not just, oh, good for you, you pulled off a film that costs nothing that no one's going to see. Like, while that might help that filmmaker work on those skills and helps those relationships, if that film ultimately doesn't have any measurable commercial success, it's not going to do a lot to move the needle for them to be able to go on and make the next project. Much less, they're not spending money with businesses, they're not putting people to work and creating livelihoods, right? So we need to do everything so that we can have our local filmmakers be able to be sizable employers, sizable sources of business for the vendors, right? And there's a lot that needs to go into making that happen. If we had done that 10 and 15 years, we wouldn't be feeling this like we are now, because there would be quite a number of other sizable, we would feel some, but instead of being down 50, 60%, we might only be down 30%, right? So I think, so what our focus is making sure that, like, that awareness of, like, we got some catch up to play. We need to do a lot and everything, and there's a lot of things we can do. Not all of it's money. People, like, for instance, Lightscape and Atlanta Grip Center, like, that's a focus on the local of, like, hey, let's make sure we're rising together, floating together. There's also so basically invest, and this is probably jumping ahead, but investing what you can where you can. That might be dollars, that might be money. But that's in developing the folks around you, developing yourself, right? And so we're continuing to offer classes, we're continuing to offer programs where people can develop and be ready, so that not only are they more ready when more business, and I do think it is inevitable, business will return. Will it return to the 2022, 2023 levels? Probably not, because that much total content, as we discussed earlier, is not being made, right? But probably somewhere in the middle of where we are and where we were.
Yeah, I appreciate how you put that, because that was really well explained, and I think helps frame this issue. And I think a lot of times as creatives, we are very averse to, like, acknowledging the business side of this industry. But at the end of the day, like, productions are expensive, and they do cost a lot of money, and the economics have to make sense as well. And so I think you did a great job framing both the creative and the business end of this, which I really appreciate. Another thing we wanted to talk to you about is you bought the Plaza. First, I'd love you to tell a little bit of that story and why you bought it, but then also, has being in that position told you anything or informed you about the state of the industry as far as, like, attendance numbers? Like, are people still wanting to see movies in the theaters? What perspective has being involved in theaters and the distribution end given you?
That's so I appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, so I've had the Plaza now going on just over 8 years.
Which, by the way, we love the Plaza.
Oh, thank you so much.
Kind of an
Likewise.
Honor. It's kind of an honor to be here.
It's an honor to be involved with it. So thank you. That's kind of you. So and then almost 3 years ago, we reopened the Terra Theater, which is the second oldest movie theater after it closed. So here's a point of perspective. So the Plaza Theater is probably one of the only cinemas in the entire country that's doing double the business it was doing before the pandemic.
Wow.
So that's one way to look at it, right? The Terra Theater also, for the last 3 years, has been the top improving theater in the market, right? On the other, but is not back to where it was pre-pandemic, right? It was really hard hit. It's doing significantly more than it was the year it closed, almost 3 times, but it's still not back to where it was. That being said, the myth or fallacy that, like, oh, people just don't want to go to the movie theaters, in my experience, that's bullshit.
Yeah, I agree.
Apologies if this is a family pot, and I just
You're good, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think a lot of people even blame it on our generation. We're currently students, and we all love going to the theater. Like, our friends, we go all the time.
We can't afford it, but we go.
We go.
So
we go.
Your generation is going to see not only films, but especially like what we play, not only digital 4K, but analog 35 and 70 millimeter, more than the previous generation was going to just 10 years ago, 20. So a little credit is due, I think, first of all, to your generation. But secondly, I think part of the thing is you can't run a movie theater in 2025 like you ran one even in 2019. And so here's another point of perspective is, so the Plaza and the Terra, aside from being the two oldest theaters, are also the two smallest. 3 screens, 4 screens, those are the smallest screen counts for hundreds of miles by a lot. The next smallest theaters are usually 8 screens and above. Okay. So I have some of my competitors, they have 8 screens. They're owned by national company. Every single movie theater in the city of Atlanta, except for R2, are owned by some national company. Even in the metro, there's only one other theater. Shout out to the Spring Cinema in Sandy Springs. That's the only locally owned in the whole metro. So, but in our local competitors with 8 screens, they normally show 100 to 125 titles a year. The Plaza and the Terra on its 7 screens shows more than 500 titles a year. So it's more than just variety. We play not only more local films by a long shot than anyone, we play more older films by a long shot than anyone, we play more independent films by a long shot than anyone, and then we also play in the space of everyone else. We're showing one battle after another right now. We're doing that in 70 millimeter. In a 500-mile radius around Atlanta,
I know our weekend plans. Yeah.
there's 180 theaters showing that film within a 500-mile radius. Normally, we don't hold a candle to the theaters who can have that in 5 screens. We're number 1 out of 180 theaters in 500 miles, right?
That's so interesting. So you are, first of all, privately owned sort of thing. You're the only...
We're the only privately owned, the only locally owned in the city of Atlanta, the metro. Now, keep in mind, here's the other thing. So to me, actually, the biggest threat is not, people don't want to go. Although I do think there are some operators who are not operating the way they should. And what I mean by is like focusing on the experience rather than focusing on like, well, I have the movie, so if you want to see it, you have to come here, right? Half of the stuff we show people can watch that same day at home for free. So why are they paying me money to do it? Because it's more than just having the freaking movie, right? It's a whole experience, though, right?
It's a pilgrimage, yeah.
But I think actually the biggest threat is actually for cinemas is what's happening with real estate. So I don't think I'm allowed to disclose the amounts, but I will say when I bought the theater 8 years ago, what I'm paying in rent right now is about 600% of what I was paying then.
Wow.
So even though we're doing as well as we can, in terms of dollars left over, we have as little, if not less money than the theater had 9 years ago when it was making a quarter of the revenue because of what's happening with real estate in Atlanta. It's insane. And the Plaza especially is on the single most expensive street in the entire state of Georgia. So,
Right.
So it's a challenge. It's a challenge.
Wow.
So anyway, all that being said, in terms of
We share an apartment. We understand.
So back to the perspective, part of your question is what perspective does that give me? Is that I think if you can create experience, people want to come out for it. I think people are realizing like, okay, my living room and watching stuff on my computer, there's a time and place for that, but I also like miss being around other people.
Right.
And so there's an aspect to that. And I think if that's done in a rewarding way where it's like, wow, this feels like I'm somewhere, then that becomes cyclical. I've seen independent films having much more success than big budget films with a big marketing budget because they focus not on, I just got to make my movie and just get it on a screen, then people show up. No. The biggest challenge right now is not getting it on a screen in a cinema. It's, does anyone know about it? Do they care about it? And will they show up? And I've seen a number of independent films that are even doing a DIY release that do almost a really, back in the day, this really hasn't been a thing since the 70s, but a roadshow exhibition model was something that used to happen a lot more back in the day. And I've seen independent films take that roadshow model and go, I'm going to go city to city, focus my promotion efforts, try and really get some press, get social media buzz, and do it over many, many weeks.
Right.
And have far more commercial success than ones who are just like, we're just going to put it out there and hope people hear about it.
So that's really interesting. As we've established, we're students, we're film students, and we are about to start kind of our culminating final film before we leave college and hopefully head off into this complicated industry that we love so much. At large, when we make a film or when we're a part of a film, there are, I would say, 2 kind of avenues that we take. We either post it immediately to an Instagram, to a Vimeo, to a YouTube, to something where people can view it, or we reserve it, build some buzz, and then send it off to as many festivals as we can afford. I don't think I've considered, or I think some of our conversation around our capstone has been around trying to go to brick and mortar places, trying to have actual people see it on a silver screen, things like that. What does that dialogue look like? Have you talked with indie filmmakers around the value of that?
Yeah.
Is that
So I will say, like, as an exhibitor, if I'm getting a film that has no marketing campaign, I need to see some other evidence that folks are going to know or care about it. Right? So if you can show me the social media activity that's happening, you can show me the press you've been able to get, you can show me with documentaries, for instance, it's a lot about targeting groups that are connected to the community that are going to get those folks. So, like, at the end of the day, there's a variety of ways, and film festivals, I think, for a lot of filmmakers, are the better way of having awareness and connection within a community. Like, I think most people think of film festivals as just part of what they do, which is like, oh, well, it's validation, it's cachet. Like, yes, that is a part of it. A more important part of it is the opportunity for you to start building an audience in that market. And that doesn't just mean, oh, I've seen that film or I've heard of that film. It means, like, they've heard about you as a filmmaker. They care about not only that film, but the next ones you're going to make. They're following you on social media. If you have an email newsletter, they're signing up for it. Like, you're being able to build your own promotional network. Film festival is the conduit to do that. And especially film festivals make decisions based generally on the creative merit, not on commercial reasons, for better or worse. There's challenges with that model. But it also means that they're willing to look at things that the industry is like, I can't make money with that. And that's how the industry does and generally has to operate, is it's a for-profit industry. What am I going to be able to make profit with? And so if they don't see the path of, like, how am I going to get that to be profitable, it's like, not to say somebody else can't make money, that's not me, right? So film festivals make it on, like, this is a really fantastic film people need to see, even if it's a hard sell on getting them to come see it. And so for a lot of independent filmmakers, if you're not selling it to a distributor who's not only is going to put it out, but more importantly, make a commitment of creating awareness of the film, then using a film festival circuit and a variety of them, at least in the largest towns, and especially if those have a relationship with a cinema, like, that's how you can kind of build on that. Now, the social media model works for a lot of folks. I think if your path is ultimately put out content on social media, and the revenue model will be we get viewership enough, get ad revenue. Like, people make lots of money doing that. Like, that, there's nothing wrong with doing that, but you got to be mindful of what direction you're trying to go. You can't just be trying everything a little bit and hope that's going to create enough results that, it's not a lottery. Just like submitting to a film festival is not a lottery. Your content strategy is a lottery, and it's not a lottery. Like, it's not just a numbers thing. One of those will hit, and maybe no. You've got to really lean into what you're doing and do it well, and focus on that and understand everything that is required of that path.
I would say that's neglected a big part in our world.
Yeah, and I don't think it's talked about a lot.
Especially kids our age.
Yeah, and it's important because that's what that next step looks like.
Mm-hmm.
While you were talking, I thought it would be important to just extend, like, a deep, heartfelt note of gratitude on behalf of both us, but just the larger local Atlanta film community as a whole, because you're doing so much to support the community through Atlanta Film Society, through things like sharing your time with us here today, but even something like the Plaza. Like, you're keeping this beautiful part of our world alive, of this beautiful independent cinema, and it's incredible. So we're truly honored to be sitting down with you here today.
I appreciate that. I don't do any of it out of I'm just a good guy, or I'm a rich guy, or I'm a selfless guy. No, I do it because I equally care about the Plaza just as much as y'all. I've just been able to be in a position of, like, oh, I could actually do something about me.
An agent of change, yes.
And the truth is like, I can be doing everything I'm doing, but if no one is responding and caring about it, well, none of that. I don't have enough money to pay the rent anyway, right? Pay all the, so, like, by myself, those efforts would fall flat and be meaningless if it wasn't for the community coming out. And the community's been incredibly supportive of the Plaza and coming and attending. The only reason we were open to the Terra is because people, before we were even able to open it, were pre-buying tickets, and then even without money, like, the entire lobby of the Terra, all the posters and the art on the wall, every single thing on the wall is from someone's personal collection.
Right.
Right? So people were giving their treasured collectibles, their time, their dollar, like whatever they, like that's the only way that these places and places like it around the country are going to survive, is when people go, you know what? It matters to me that a place that's been around a long time, that has been a place where we come together to share stories and a common experience, and as we've been doing it for generations, we realize I have a role to play, and I can't do everything, but I can do something, and I'm going to do that. And that's the only way these places exist.
We hope to follow your lead.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And to talk about something that sounds so optimistic and so beautiful in a time where I think a lot of people about this industry are very afraid and very pessimistic, that's super refreshing to hear. So I really appreciate you saying all that and sharing all that with us here today.
In hard times, and I've seen a number, I graduated during the recession from undergrad, right? So I graduated when it was like, oh, the only time it's been worse was the Great Depression. Like I've seen, right? I was running a movie theater and a film festival during COVID. When people are like, the last place in the world I want to be is a. So I've seen some hard times, and I think our biggest enemy in hard times is not the thing we're afraid of. It's our own fear, our own apathy, our own hopelessness. Like that actually is a far bigger danger than whatever we might be afraid of, because it's going to be the thing that makes us stop trying, stop innovating, stop working together, right? Stop helping each other. It's also very natural. Keep in mind, like that is the natural response. So we have to fight that natural response and realize, like, no, bigger and better, more sustainable is possible, but like the only reason we exist as society is not alone. Right, is together, is working together, learning from each other, all that kind of stuff. So
That's a beautiful, beautiful sentiment. As far as a space like this today, we're here at Cine Gear. What does this offer to the filmmakers that we're talking about, to the storytellers? How does this push that mindset forward? And I guess we're collaborating, we're talking, but what actions are we taking from moments like this?
So I'll say, so especially for those who've never come and been, it offers both what's obvious and what's not obvious, right? So what's obvious is you get to see the latest and greatest in gear. You get to see the companies that are either developing that, using that, offering it to sell, to buy, to rent. So that's the obvious thing, right? Because it's reason to exist. The not obvious thing is it helps you get a sense of who's in town, company-wise. Lets you meet the other people in the room, right? The relationship building, the awareness, the education there. Right, so like even if you're like, oh, okay, well it's a lot of lenses and gears and camera and lighting work. I'm not a lenses and gear and camera guy. I'm a something else. Doesn't matter, right? Get here, be here. The only way you're going to make anything happen is getting out of your apartment.
Yeah.
And you're going to be able to meet and build the relationships for those kind of people that you're going to rely on if you're a director or a producer or an editor or whatever. So it ends up being far more relevant. It's not as obvious. It ends up being far more relevant, and far more useful if you're like, I can just look online of you're not even remotely scratching the surface on the value of coming to something like this.
I think you're right. And even, I think we can speak to that a little bit ourselves, because we attended here last year and we didn't really know anyone. And through this, we got to meet a lot of the lovely people that have helped put this booth together. And they were kind enough and thoughtful enough to give us the opportunity to be the ones sitting here right now having this conversation with you. And that only happened because we came here.
Exactly. And now, and keep in mind, like anything else, generally there's not a huge payoff the first time around, right? If you come to something like this, you've never been here, first time you come, you're just like taking it in and understanding. You might meet some people and be able to build on that and follow up on that, right? The second time, you're like, okay, I know what this is going to be. I'm going to take it in more. You might attend more of the panels, right? You might be a little bit more outgoing. The key thing is it's a lot harder if you just go by yourself. It's a lot easier if you go with a friend or more than one friend. Get some, like that makes it less intimidating. You know what I mean? And you can cover more ground, and it's just far more effective. And that's true not only for an event like this, networking events, film festivals, anything like. So find, and if you don't have someone to go with, like, make a friend, and then make a friend there, and that's the person you're going with.
Sure. Yeah. No. Exactly.
Yeah.
I think, Spencer, that's kind of how we operate everything from film fest to the grocery store. Like it's. We rely on each other in that way, for sure, and that's a big blessing. When we were here last year, meeting companies such as Lightscape, it was just really cool to feel like a part of the industry. It was really cool to, Trilith Studios. They shot my favorite movies here. So it was cool to walk amongst the kings and to feel a little closer to that. And by extension, as we get to attend these panels and meet with these industry professionals, it's just really cool that it feels more accessible than I originally thought.
Yeah.
And people are willing to have that conversation.
Well, and there's also this. I don't know. This might be one of, if not the only, opportunity all year where you can come on the lot and you're not on a production or whatever. So that's a cool. And to your point on the history, like this place has been around a decade now. So like you can now appreciate the fact that this isn't just a really cool, impressive box with a lot of the latest tech. There's history here, right? Like the amount of people who have been making stories, like that's like, so you appreciate being able to physically be in the presence of that. There's something more to exactly, yeah.
I guess to round us out here, we'd like to ask all of our guests, is there anything we should have asked or any advice you would have to anyone who may be listening?
Yeah, I mean, I've kind of put a little bit in that, regardless anyway, but the biggest thing, I'll just to reiterate that we can be doing right now in a time of uncertainty and a time of less business is not get so overwhelmed by the feelings of uncertainty and cling and isolate, right? This is the time to double down. This is the time to focus on how you can invest your dollars, your time, your attention, your talent in yourself and in those around you. Building those relationships, building those skills. For companies, it's the opportunity to not only be able to get some more business in the short term, but invest in who will be your customers in the mid and long term. For individuals, if you're in college or out of college, you've been working like focusing and investing your time on people who can be making stories here now, even if it's for low or no budget, like that investment, like those relationships of, oh, that person was with me when times were hardest, those are the most enduring. And inevitably, the people who are able to come out of this are the ones who are and will be strongest for years to come, right? So it's like, so again, to me, like everything I do is not out of altruism and generosity. If you look with a wide enough lens and you look a long enough view, you realize like, oh, well, my success depends on the success of everyone around me. So I'm going to do everything I can to make those people, those places, those institutions successful. Inevitably, I'm going to rise with that too, right? So,
wow, that's incredible. Thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people keep up with Atlanta Film Society and everything y'all are doing? How can people support?
Yeah, so everything Atlanta Film Society, atlfilm.org. That's both the festival and what we do year-round. For those maybe not in the local area, atlantafilmfestival.com is just festival-focused. Of course, we're on all the socials. Plaza Theater, plazaatlanta.com on all the socials. Plaza Atlanta, Terra Theater, same. Each of us have email newsletters, which don't just rely on social media to be the only way you get information, because you're generally getting at best 10% of anything anyone is putting out. So if it's something that you're like, no, I need to not miss anything, make sure you're signing up for those newsletters, on occasion browsing websites, that kind of stuff. And then, come by and check us out. Film Society does 150 plus events throughout the year. There's always something going on every week, much less every month. Plaza and Terra Theater open 7 days a week, 365. So come and see us.
We'll be right there.
Thank you so much for sitting down with us. I feel like we learned so much.
I can't wait to watch us back.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for having me. And I'm just going to say on here, y'all did a phenomenal job. I've done a lot of interviews, been interviewed a lot as well. Y'all are terrific. So I wish you much success.